What if everything you learned in school was nothing more than a poorly stitched fairy tale? What if the history written in those thick, dusty books was designed not to educate you, but to blind you? Think about the Spartans. You have seen them in movies, painted on ancient pottery, standing proud in their bronze helmets and leather sandals. Warriors of legend. But wait. Stop for a moment and ask yourself a simple question. Where did they get the metal? How did these ancient people, living in a time before electricity, before steam engines, before any modern technology, manage to smelt bronze and forge thousands of helmets, swords, and shields? Bronze requires temperatures exceeding 1,100 degrees Celsius. You need furnaces, bellows, precise knowledge of metallurgy, fuel sources, and industrial infrastructure. Did they have all this? Or perhaps we are being told a story that simply does not add up when you examine it closely. This is not an isolated problem. This is the first crack in the wall. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Our cities, our monuments, our entire understanding of the past begins to crumble when you start asking the uncomfortable questions nobody wants you to ask. Cities and sewers, the impossible foundation. According to official history, cities emerged in one of two ways. Either they slowly grew from small villages over hundreds of years, or masses of people migrated to one location and built a city from scratch. Both scenarios sound reasonable at first, but perhaps they are not reasonable at all. Ask yourself this: why do modern villages not transform into cities anymore? You drive through the countryside and see the same small towns that existed 50 or 100 years ago. They do not grow. They do not evolve into metropolises. Why not? What changed? The official answer is vague and unconvincing. But maybe the real answer is simpler and more disturbing. Cities were never built that way to begin with. Here is the problem nobody talks about. Sewage systems. Every city, even the smallest one, requires a sophisticated underground network of pipes, drains, and channels to manage waste and water. This is not something you can add later. You cannot dig up an entire city after it is built and install sewage pipes beneath the streets and buildings. The sewage system must be designed and constructed before a single house is erected. It is the invisible foundation upon which everything else depends. Now think about what it takes to design such a system. You need detailed topographical maps drawn on paper. You need a pencil to sketch those maps. Do you know how many industrial operations are required to manufacture a single pencil? 86 separate processes. 86. And that takes 16 days of coordinated labor. You need graphite mining, wood processing, metal ferrules, rubber erasers, paint, glue. You need factories, transportation networks, skilled workers. And that is just for a pencil. But it does not stop there. To design a sewage system, you need engineers with advanced education in mathematics, physics, and hydraulics. You need geologists to analyze the soil composition. You need surveyors with precision instruments to measure elevations and slopes. Without accurate slope calculations, sewage will not flow properly, and the entire system fails. So, where were these specialists in ancient times? The official story tells us that cities were built by warriors and peasants, illiterate farmers and soldiers, people who could not read or write, let alone perform complex engineering calculations. Does this make any sense? Can you build a functioning city with sewage infrastructure using only brute force and guesswork? Perhaps the answer is no. Perhaps these cities were never built by primitive humans at all. Architecture, cathedrals built by slaves. Walk into any medieval castle or Gothic cathedral, and you are surrounded by magnificence. Soaring arches, intricate stone carvings, vaulted ceilings that seem to defy gravity, stained glass windows depicting scenes of breathtaking beauty. These structures are symphonies carved from stone. They are masterpieces of engineering and artistry. And yet, we are told these wonders were constructed by serfs, by illiterate peasants who worked for scraps of bread and the crack of a whip. Really? Does that sound believable to you? Think about the technical challenges. How do you cut massive stone blocks with perfect right angles and smooth surfaces using only hand tools? How do you lift blocks weighing several tons to heights of 30 or 40 meters without cranes or motors? How do you calculate the precise angles and weight distribution required for arches and domes so they do not collapse? This demands advanced knowledge of geometry, physics, and material science. You cannot just stack rocks and hope for the best. One miscalculation and the entire structure comes crashing down, killing everyone inside. Official history claims these cathedrals took 100 to 300 years to build. Generation after generation of workers supposedly continued the construction, following plans passed down from their ancestors. But where are these plans? Where are the blueprints? How did illiterate workers preserve architectural knowledge with millimeter precision across centuries? How did they maintain consistency in design and technique when the original builders were long dead? And here is another problem. Without electric lights, without power tools, without concrete mixers, without steel reinforcement, building even a simple stone structure is nearly impossible. In modern times, with all our technology, constructing a large building takes years and requires hundreds of specialized workers, engineers, and project managers. But we are supposed to believe that medieval peasants, working in the dark with hammers and chisels, created structures far more complex and beautiful than anything we build today. Maybe they did not. Maybe these buildings were never built by humans at all. Maybe they were already here. Museum artifacts, frauds behind glass. I once visited a history museum. They had an interactive exhibit where you could hold replicas of medieval weapons and armor. I picked up a knight's helmet. It was a crude metal bucket, thick and heavy. It weighed at least 10 to 12 kilograms. I placed it on my head. Immediately, I understood something was terribly wrong. The helmet restricted vision to narrow slits. It was suffocating. The weight pressed down on my neck. If someone struck this helmet with a sword or hammer, the force would transfer directly into my skull. Concussion, brain damage, death. How could anyone fight wearing this? How could anyone survive a battle in such a contraption? Then I picked up the sword. It was thick and dull. The blade was rounded, at least 4 or 5 millimeters thick along the edge. It had never been sharpened. You could not cut anything with this weapon. You could only bludgeon, maybe bruise someone. But slash through armor or flesh? Impossible. Then I looked at the artifacts behind the glass cases. Rapiers and sabers encrusted with gold and precious gemstones. Cannons engraved with elaborate decorative patterns. Shields painted with intricate heraldic designs. Everything was ornate, expensive, beautiful. But none of it was functional. Why would soldiers carry weapons covered in gold and jewels into battle? Battle is brutal, chaotic, dirty. You need tools that work, not decorations. A sword covered in gemstones is not a weapon. It is a showpiece. It belongs in a palace, not on a battlefield. Maybe that is exactly what these artifacts are. Maybe they were never used in war. Maybe they were created specifically for museums to fill display cases and give us something to look at when we visit. Perhaps the entire collection of medieval artifacts is a fabrication manufactured long after the supposed events they represent. Military campaigns, logistics of insanity. Ancient chronicles describe military campaigns spanning thousands of kilometers, armies marching across continents, battles fought in distant lands. The writers describe events as if they were eyewitnesses, even when the events happened thousands of kilometers away from where they lived. How? How did information travel that fast? A horse can travel perhaps 100 kilometers per day under ideal conditions, but 90% of the population did not own horses. They did not have paved roads. They walked. They traveled maybe 20 or 30 kilometers per day, if they were lucky. So how did news spread across empires in a matter of days? And how did armies move? Alexander the Great supposedly marched his troops from Greece to India, thousands of kilometers through deserts, mountains, and hostile territories. How do you supply an army on such a journey? How much food and water does one soldier need per day? Multiply that by thousands of men, then add horses, then add pack animals. The logistical nightmare is incomprehensible. Napoleon marched his army to Moscow, on foot, from France, over 1,500 kilometers, through harsh weather, with no modern supply lines. Modern military analysts say this is impossible. Even with trains, trucks, and aircraft, supplying a large army over such distances is extraordinarily difficult. But Napoleon did it with wagons pulled by oxen. Really? Or consider the Spanish conquistadors. A few hundred men sailed from Spain to South America. They supposedly conquered empires with millions of inhabitants. They taught entire continents to speak Spanish. They built colonial cities. All of this with a tiny force, separated from their homeland by thousands of miles of ocean, with no way to send reinforcements or supplies. How? Compare this to recent history. The United States, with the most advanced military in the world, could not defeat Vietnam. Rebuilding a single city destroyed by war takes decades. We struggle to accomplish what our ancestors supposedly did with ease. Why? Maybe because they did not do it. Maybe these stories exist only in books and paintings, not in reality. Two worlds. Beauty versus ugliness. Look around you. Look at the world you live in. Now compare it to the world of the past. The past gave us magnificent sculptures, timeless paintings, classical music that moves the soul, ornate furniture crafted with care, jewelry made by master artisans, Gothic cathedrals, marble palaces, gardens of stunning beauty. Everything was made with love, with soul, with purpose. It was a world of harmony and meaning. Now look at the present. Gray concrete boxes, soulless apartment buildings, mass-produced furniture that falls apart after a few years, cheap plastic everything, ugly, utilitarian, disposable. We build nothing beautiful anymore, nothing that lasts. The official explanation is that people in the past had skills we have lost. Leonardo da Vinci applied layers of paint thinner than a human hair. Modern artists cannot replicate his technique. Medieval stonemasons carved intricate details that modern machines struggle to reproduce. Somehow, despite all our scientific progress, we have become less capable than our ancestors. Does this make sense? We split the atom. We sent humans to space. We invented computers and genetic engineering. And yet we cannot paint like Leonardo? We cannot build like the medieval masons? Maybe these two worlds are not connected. Maybe the masterpieces of the past were not created by our ancestors. Maybe they were not created by humans at all. What if these two realities exist in parallel? One world of divine beauty, eternal and unchanging. Another world of human mediocrity, temporary and decaying. What if we did not inherit the past? What if we simply found it? And what if we invented stories to explain it, because the truth is too strange, too frightening to accept? The cracks are spreading, the fairy tale is falling apart, and once you see the contradictions, once you start questioning, you cannot go back. The journey has only begun. What if our world is not what we think it is? What if history does not move forward in a straight line, but instead moves in cycles? What if everything resets, like a computer rebooting after a crash? Imagine this. At certain intervals, our world undergoes a complete reset. Everything humanity has built, every imperfect structure, every temporary creation, every flawed monument, turns to dust. It vanishes, gone, as if it never existed. But the magnificent cathedrals remain. The marble palaces stand untouched. The masterful sculptures survive. The timeless works of art endure. Why? Because they were never built by human hands. They are creations of a higher order. They were placed here by the Creator, not by us. When the reset happens, these divine artifacts do not crumble. They are reborn, restored to their original perfection, bathed in light and glory. They are eternal because they do not belong to our temporary, decaying world. They exist beyond time, beyond entropy, beyond death. We are simply the latest inhabitants of this world. We find these structures and we invent stories to explain them. We create elaborate histories, dynasties, and empires to make sense of the beauty surrounding us. But perhaps none of it is true. Perhaps we are just children playing in a house we did not build, pretending we understand its origin. The question nobody asks: why are we here? Most people believe the world was created for happiness, for joy, for comfort and pleasure. They believe we are meant to live in paradise, surrounded by beauty and abundance. But if this is true, then why is happiness so rare? Why is human history an endless river of suffering, war, betrayal, and pain? The standard answer goes like this: evil forces prevent our happiness. Reptilians, the demiurge, the matrix, the devil, secret societies, hidden controllers. They are the reason we suffer. If only we could defeat them, we would finally be free to live in bliss. Let us imagine just for a moment that this is true. Imagine all evil forces vanish overnight. Every corrupt politician, every secret manipulator, every dark entity, gone. Humanity is finally free. We have unlimited resources, perfect health, no wars, no poverty, no oppression, nothing standing between us and pure happiness. What would people do? They would lie on couches, eating until they could not move. They would drink themselves into oblivion. They would consume every substance that offers temporary pleasure. They would travel from resort to resort, seeking novelty and entertainment. They would buy things they do not need. They would indulge every desire without restraint. And then what? What happens to the human soul in such a world? It withers, it rots, it degrades into nothingness. Complete and total spiritual death. Maybe the world was not created for that. Maybe comfort and pleasure are not the purpose of existence. Earth, the testing ground for souls. There is a place where difficult and painful tests are conducted, a place designed not for relaxation, but for challenge, for growth through struggle. This place is called a testing ground. Earth is not a vacation resort. It is not a retirement home. It is a testing ground for souls. Life here is hard, unbearably hard. And this is not an accident or a mistake. It is by design. We are not here to enjoy ourselves. We are here to learn, to overcome obstacles, to make choices between good and evil, to become stronger, wiser, purer through suffering. A wise man once said, "True goodness is perceived by most people as absolute evil." This is the great paradox. Everything we experience as suffering, disease, hardship, injustice, pain, is actually the greatest gift we could receive. These are not punishments. They are training equipment on the testing ground. They exist to forge our souls into something greater than they were before. The testing ground is not comfortable. It is not supposed to be. You do not build strength by lying on a beach. You build strength by lifting heavy weights, by pushing through exhaustion, by enduring discomfort. The soul grows the same way. The hidden meaning of angles. The word polygon comes from two Greek roots, poly, meaning many, and gonia, meaning angle. A polygon is a many-angled shape, but perhaps the word contains hidden meanings far deeper than geometry. In sacred texts across cultures, angles carry profound symbolic weight. They represent confinement, limitation, punishment, isolation. In the Bible, the corner is associated with the underworld. Sinners are cast into the dark corners of hell, trapped and forgotten. In the ancient Vedic texts of India, Shiva the destroyer was imprisoned in what the texts call the deadly angle, or the shining angle of four sides, to stop his dance of destruction. In Buddhism, hell itself is called Naraka, derived from ne, meaning below, and roka, meaning corner. The corner below, the angle at the bottom. Across all traditions, the angle represents the same thing: a trap, a prison, a place of testing and torment. Perhaps the ancients understood something about angles that we have forgotten. Perhaps they knew angles possess a hidden power, a metaphysical force that shapes reality in ways we can no longer perceive. There are whispers of an ancient system, a knowledge from a previous cycle, a past game. In that system, each person was connected to one of 124 gods based on their birth date. Each god corresponded to a specific angle, ranging from 360 degrees down to 15 degrees. Every individual had a patron deity and a sacred angle. People in that time knew how to use their angles. They possessed abilities we would call magic today, powers we cannot access because we have lost the knowledge. We do not even remember that such knowledge existed. The awakening. Breaking free from the illusion, let us retrace the path we have walked together. We started with a simple doubt. Where did the Spartans get their metal? From there, we discovered that ancient cities with sophisticated sewage systems could not have been built by primitive people. We saw that cathedrals and castles are engineering impossibilities for illiterate peasants. We examined museum artifacts and found crude, non-functional forgeries. We studied military campaigns and realized the logistics make no sense whatsoever. Pattern after pattern, contradiction after contradiction. The official story collapses under the weight of its own absurdity. Why? Why fabricate all of this? Why lie about history on such a massive scale? Because the truth about who we are and what we are capable of must remain hidden. If we knew our true nature, if we remembered our true power, the entire system of control would shatter instantly. So instead, they feed us fairy tales. They tell us we evolved from apes. They tell us we are insignificant specks floating on a rock through infinite space. They tell us we are weak, limited, powerless. All of this is designed to keep us from asking the most important question of all. What if we are more than they told us? What if we possess abilities beyond imagination? What if the testing ground is not a prison, but a school? And what if graduation means breaking free? Here is what you must do. Stop accepting everything on faith. Question what you see and hear. Doubt the dogmas drilled into your mind since childhood. Think for yourself. Research. Investigate. Share this theory with those who are ready to listen. The awakening of one person can trigger a chain reaction. Consciousness spreads like fire. One spark can ignite a revolution. Escaping the testing ground does not begin with storming the walls. It begins with waking up. It begins with seeing the bars of the cage for the first time. It begins with realizing you have been asleep your entire life. Wake up! Question everything. The truth is waiting for those brave enough to seek it. And if you want to go deeper, if you want to explore ideas too dangerous for public platforms, join me on my Telegram channel. Some knowledge cannot be shared openly. Some truths are too volatile for the censors. But for those ready to take the next step, the door is open. The journey has only just begun.